Welcome to our Cybersafe Digest weekly podcast, episode 30. Each week, we will unfold the most recent cyber attacks and will provide you with valuable insights on how to shield your business from these threats, along with practical steps and tips to enhance your cybersecurity.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 30 of Cybersafe Digest. It's a long time since I was 30, and I'm happy to celebrate this today. Toby, I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, it was only like last week when I was 30, so yeah.
But of course, okay. So I'm Martin Roberts, managing director at New Ways. Toby.
Yeah, Toby Stevenson, Chief Technology Officer at New Ways.
Super, Toby. As per usual, I'm here at Tucked Away, and you are globetrotting again.
I am, yes. I'm in very sunny Florida actually this week at a cybersecurity conference.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. We won't talk about too much about what you're finding out this week. We'll do that for a future episode and give you a chance to digest. As we said, I think a few episodes ago, it all sounds really glamorous. You know, Amsterdam, New York, Florida, etc. But you generally see the inside of big convention centres and hotel rooms.
Oh yeah, I actually thought this morning as I was getting myself ready for this podcast that how it was less. I was outside for less than about 10 minutes yesterday because these convention centres are huge and everything's connected by air-conditioned tunnel to everything. So you don't actually need to step outside. I was breathing regurgitated air-conditioned air and getting no natural sunlight. So yeah, it could quite literally be anywhere.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about what your learnings will be this week and what you found out about the new threats on the horizon and such like. However, let's talk about a couple of things which are in the news right now. We've seen a couple of big data dumps of people's credentials, one via a Ticketmaster hack, huge amounts of credentials out there on the market, up for sale, I've no doubt, and passing around. It seems to have taken a little while to become knowledge. But I mean, what do we know? What do we know?
Ticketmaster was earlier this week. It was announced. They've declared that it was something like 560 million bits of PII, so personally identified information from Ticketmaster customers over who knows how many years, but obviously they must be storing that data for a long time. And of course, the number of events that Ticketmaster sells tickets for, then you can kind of see how you perhaps get to that kind of number, that 500 million bits of information. It looks to be credit card information as well, or partially exposed credit card information. Yeah. So really interesting on that one. And it's still perhaps a little bit too early to do anything other than speculate as to the nature and the source of it. So as always, these big organizations want to attribute the attack to a particular attacking group or a particular mechanism that was used to breach them. One of the interesting things that has been floating around with this, and it may be, I don't know, maybe it's a double-edged sword. Maybe it saves some embarrassment at Ticketmaster, but maybe it imparts it into other areas of their organisation. Is it seems to be being playing on the underlying platform that Ticketmaster runs some or all of its infrastructure on. So we've all heard of Amazon Web Services, so AWS and Microsoft Azure. There's another global player out there which is less well known called Snowflake, and Ticketmaster runs some of its infrastructure on that Snowflake platform. And coincidentally, earlier this week, Snowflake actually engaged with two huge cyber incident response players, CrowdStrike and Mandiant, to look at a potential problem. And the initial noises coming out of that are that a part of that platform was compromised due to the bad configuration practices of certain customers and the use and reuse of credentials. So this may be less of an exploited vulnerability and more a case of attackers log in and they don't hack in. I think if you can get to that underlying platform, then you've got access to a lot of the data and you can bypass some of the controls that perhaps in the application. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out, but it may not be a Ticketmaster front end per se problem. It may be an underlying platform problem. Now, it's still embarrassing if it is true that bad configuration practice, particularly for somebody of the size of Ticketmaster and the amount of data that they hold. So I think probably one of the things that is kind of interesting to consider is that Ticketmaster will have all sorts of cybersecurity accreditations, ISO 27001, and they're probably SOC 2 compliant as well. Yet having those nice certificates on the wall in their offices haven't been able to preclude them from being subject to something like this. So
the way from this, of course, is that if you assume that your underlying platform, your underlying support or whatever is doing the right thing, that's probably a mistake. You need to go and do stuff. Just because you're using somebody else's platform doesn't necessarily mean you don't have to take responsibility.
No, that's right. Yeah, all of the cloud platform providers operate a shared responsibility model. Basically, they are putting their Teflon jackets on and transferring all the liability for anything that goes wrong onto the client that's consuming the services.
Not my fault, Gov. Right, brilliant.
Exactly.
So that's the big one. So the advice here, of course, is that if you've been a Ticketmaster customer at any point, or even you've been on there, registered on there, the chances are your credentials, there's something out there about you. You need to go and change your password at the very least. And one would suggest if you use the same password for anything else, maybe go and change those too, and not the same one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it harks back to a previous podcast episode where we spoke around password managers and use their ability to create unique, complicated passwords and store those away. Don't reuse passwords. Don't use simple passwords. There's a bit of a tinfoil hat moment coming. Assume that the worst possible stuff could happen. So it might be worthwhile keeping an eye out on identity theft services, things like that, just to see whether anybody has tried to impersonate you or pass themselves off as you. So dark web monitoring might be a good shout. I think the other thing, and some of this is just about how we interact with these services. Maybe I've always thought this, but convenience kind of stops you because it ends up being a pain. But actually, when you're using or buying online services, use a credit card because you're spending somebody else's money. So actually, if someone has taken now, so Ticketmaster has lost a whole bunch of obfuscated credit card information. Well, that could be used in some nefarious way. If it's a credit card, it's the credit card's money that's being spent, and you've then got grounds to say, well, I've not authorised that. Whereas if it's a debit card or a bank transfer or something like that, you've got to claim getting the money back, and the money has actually left your possession. So some of it is just about that, I guess, protectionism of your own assets.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then another hack we've heard about in the news this week is Santander. The credentials been stolen there.
Apparently, it's the same group that have compromised Ticketmaster.
They're busy people.
They are. What that kind of says to me is if that part's true, it's probably not too much of a leap to think that it's probably a similar kind of entry point that they've made. So again, it might not be surprising if it turns out that Santander were using Snowflake for some or part of their infrastructure. Same week, same gang, potential similarity with cloud platforms. So it's possibly a very similar thing. Again, it's all the same thing. These organizations will have already or will be imminently reaching out to give you more information. They're very cagey about what they'll release. So they won't release something until they know something for certain, so that they don't have to retract it, or they can't be accused of doing something that was scaremongering or something like that. But ultimately, it's going to be change your credentials, keep an eye on your bank accounts, those kinds of things. I mean, the Santander is not just UK based. So the data that I'm seeing says that the data has come from all over the place. Could be everywhere, but it's certainly Chile, Spain, and Uruguay, as well as the UK, are potentially affected. They've turned around and said transactional data or any data that would allow money to be transferred hasn't been taken, but that's kind of what they know now. And it wouldn't be the first time that actually the issue gets updated to say, actually, we've now found that this has happened, we've found that that's happened. So I guess one thing I would say to
there's two levels here. Our intended audience is, CEOs, CFOs, people who run IT for SM and SMBs. Is it what we're telling you now? Is it important? Sure. If you've transacted with either of these organisations, you need to go and take care. But I guess the one thing it shows you, you can guess the amount of money these organisations, these huge organisations, are spending on cybersecurity.
Yeah,
because they know their targets. The reality is, despite that huge spend, they still got done in the crudest terms, And you shared with me last week what the people should be spending on cybersecurity as a part of their IT budget. We'll talk about what they should be spending anywhere at some point in the future. And it's quite a large number. It's like 19-20%, I think. But these people will be spending more than that on security because it's really critical. Folks, if these people can get done, your small medium enterprise can be too. In fact, you're easier. Now, we talked last week about the type of hackers and things like that, and then good hackers, bad hackers. The last couple of podcasts. One of the things we talked about was being an innocent bystander, and that's the other story this week, which is incredibly sad that certain hospitals have had to cancel operations, had to cancel scans and things like that because the computer systems that they utilise from a third party have been compromised.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So one of the, let's call them supply chain partners for a particular NHS trust in London was the victim of a ransomware attack. And it essentially meant that all of the diagnostic services they provided the hospital were unable to be carried out. It's not, I suppose in a way, it's not hugely dissimilar to the Santander and the Ticketmaster ones in as much as they have not been directly targeted, but something that their business relies upon has been targeted.
I don't know. I mean, the NHS, what can they do? They could not use services from third parties, impossible, or it's an inherent risk. And everyone, if you're using so much, you can do yourself, and you should do everything that you can yourself, but be aware that you are at risk by any other product that you use from a third party. You will be affected in some way.
Yeah, and one of the things that some of the more advanced cybersecurity frameworks introduce to try and help you understand the risks of dealing with third parties is bringing in a supply chain element. So trying to have some understanding and governance of your critical supply chains, capabilities, readiness, what their infrastructure's like, because that way you can then make an intelligent judgment around how risky it is to be working with a given organisation. So here, and I'm sure that the NHS have done exactly that. They've done their due diligence, and this external organisation has probably passed muster. But it's one of the things I like to say from time to time is that compliance doesn't always equal security. You can walk the walk, but you've got to be able to talk the talk. And unfortunately, what's probably happened here is that this third party probably hasn't been targeted as a supply chain partner. It's just an unlucky, unhappy coincidence, and that it has a knock-on effect. It's probably just an organisation that has clicked on a phishing email or has installed a piece of rogue software from the internet, allowed an attacker to get inside, and they've then run riot, and they've either not had the necessary tools in place or the procedures in place to minimize the blast radius of whatever happens, because ultimately this is going to happen to everybody at some time, and it's how do you contain it and how do you respond to it is going to be the critical factors. And here it sounds as though it's been quite damaging to their ability to conduct diagnostic activity. It might be that the finance and the back office teams are absolutely fine. It might be just the diagnostics part that's been hit, but that should be considered the same as the warehouse management system in a distribution business, or in the plant area of a manufacturing business. These are the bits that make the product. They are the things that generate the money. These need to be treated as a critical asset, and they arguably need to have more attention than maybe some of the back office systems. The sales and the marketing and the finance people. Maybe they need to be viewed at least at the same severity, and maybe as a more critical asset, because some of these environments can be quite damaging to an organization if they can't make goods, if they can't ship goods, and they can't run these tests, provide the service that's been requested. Then it can hit quite hard and have these unintended side effects that it then knocks on to their supply chain. So in this case, the NHS Trust cannot perform certain procedures or do consultations because they don't have the data back.
It's horrendous, and it is. I find it hard to believe that a group of hackers would intentionally target services such as this NHS to stop people getting treatment they deserve or things that they need.
Yeah, I mean, some of them have a code of conduct where they and we've seen that before actually, where certain groups have said, we're not going to attack healthcare, and it turns out they have attacked healthcare. And what they do is they say, we apologise, here's the key, unlock it all.
Yeah,
but
it may well be
those
an
are probably
accident, or this may well be an accident, or they're just plain evil. Right. Okay. So big stuff happening this week. Now we're not going to do an acronym this week, actually, Toby.
Oh, okay.
But we were chatting earlier on, and you were telling me a story about what you've learned this week, or you're learning this week about AI and deep fake stuff. Yeah. So some of the stuff this week there's been a heavy focus on AI and how AI is influencing the cybersecurity landscape, how it's empowering attackers to do more and be more successful, but conversely also how it's empowering defenders to be more responsive and more reactive. And it's as always, it's an arms race, and you've got to try and everything's running at 1,000 miles an hour, and you've got to try and keep up. And one of the anecdotal stories that was given during one of the keynote sessions was around the use of deep fakes. So deep fakes are where AI is used to impersonate either somebody's voice or somebody's physical appearance, or even documentation. And there's been a few well-regarded examples. So in terms of deepfake documents, there was in the French presidential elections the last time round, where it was Le Pen and Macron that were facing off each other. It's alleged that a pro-Russian group who was in support of Le Pen released a bunch of fake documents that suggested that Macron had got all sorts of offshore accounts with monies taken from illicit means and all kind. And they were since debunked, but they were quite convincing. The way that they were leaked again was quite convincing, and that's really what AI does. It makes things convincing. Yeah.
And one of the emerging threats, and it's not so much a business related, it's more of a generalized threat, really, but said to be targeting the well-heeled individuals, is a virtual kidnapping. And so what happens here is that you get a phone call from your nearest and dearest saying she or he has been picked up by masked men, and she's in the back of a van somewhere, and they're demanding X, Y, and Z, and if they get it in the next hour, they'll release them. And then the kidnappers come on the phone and kind of reiterate the payment details and all that kind of stuff. And it's normally at a level that is relatively easy to access for the well-heeled individual. So they then make that payment because they want their nearest and dearest to return safe and sound. And they do that. And then half an hour later, the nearest and dearest walks in the front door with bags full of shopping, and they haven't really been kidnapped. It was a deep fake voice. And so somebody had taken that voice of that person and were able to construct a plausible message. And there are sites on the internet where you can do this, and you can tell the AI to inject fear or inject humor or inject tiredness or different traits that might influence the voice. And literally, they just have to type in the way that AI is working now. They don't even have to type in English, so they can type in a different language. AI will do that really accurate translation. So gone are the days of Google Translate and it being a bit clumsy. The AIs can translate in a much more natural way. That then gets fed into the voice generator. The voice generator literally needs to have 10, 15, 20 seconds of that person's voice. So again, they find that this person in advance, they put the recorder on their phone and they walk next to them while they're perhaps engaging them in a conversation, or get them when they're in a coffee shop or having lunch or something like that where they're talking. That's enough for the AI to build up a voice profile of what this person probably sounds like. And of course, this then fake message gets played. They sound like they're under duress. The wealthy individual panics, pays the money as requested, and
off you go.
Yeah.
Now that's the thing. No, so actually, Toby, because you do this podcast along with me, we are both very vulnerable to this. Except, of course, as wealthy individuals, we don't count. and secondly, I have to say that given the choice of, as you say, the example can be that the person's just been out shopping.
Yeah.
Given the opportunity, or given the choice between being kidnapped or going shopping at Sainsbury's, give me the kidnapping any day.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. It's not really it's an interesting abuse of AI. I think that's kind of thing, and I think we'll see that more and more, that AI is breaking down those barriers that have previously meant that phishing emails were easy to spot because of the bad grammar. AI allows those to be created much more effectively.
I can see a natural progression of this, because this, we know, and we've recounted this before, that when anybody joins our business and they've advertised on LinkedIn or updated their LinkedIn profile, say they're starting with us, we know that within a day or so, they get a Teams message from me saying, hey, are you busy? And because we work in an open plan office, often that person will wander over to me and they go, did you want to see me? And I'll go, no. So I've got a message from you. No, it's from somebody who's recognised that you're on these. Next time they might get a phone call. Next time they might have an interaction, because AI is going to help all of this.
Yeah.
So this anecdote, which I'm sure is very real, seems a bit out there at this moment in time, but actually it's coming your way, folks, because as it proliferates, it'll get cheaper to do, it'll get easier to do, and the people with the less skills than the current crop of people doing it will also begin to pick it up. They'll learn.
Yeah. Well, so one of the barriers at the moment to a lot of these, we're kind of digressing into generalized fraud or consumer fraud.
Sure.
But one of the barriers to the success of these things typically is the gullibility of the individual that's been targeted, and the ability of the attacker to masquerade as whatever they are.
Yes.
And now, these are on the TV all the time. We see them, and it's quite often an individual where English isn't their first language is making the call in, saying they're from the bank's fraud department or whatever, and they're normally targeting somebody of an older generation who is perhaps a little more trusting, perhaps a little bit less suspicious around these things. They've rung me, they must know my details, and so on. What these advances in AI will do is it means that actually people that are a bit more savvy are more likely to get tricked. So the target audience will increase because the efficacy of the attack, of the scam, is so much greater.
Right. That's been a very fascinating run through the scams of the different methods and the developing methods this week, and talk about deep fake and such like, all fascinating stuff. Toby, you're up early because we're doing this around midday UK time. You're out in Florida.
Yes.
So you either have the opportunity now to go and get breakfast or have a quick nap before the rest of your very busy day.
Yes.
Do enjoy. Do come back, and we'll talk about it very soon, about the other learnings. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Much appreciated. Thank you, Toby.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. We've reached the end of episode 30 of our Cybersafe Digest weekly podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and to make sure you don't miss out on our future episodes, hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcast. For more cybersecurity wisdom and resources, head over to our website at cybersafe.co.uk. See you next Thursday.